Hello and welcome to the Smoky Mountains podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. And if this is your first time, welcome to our neck of the woods. Pull up a chair, find your favorite place to sit and listen to, or if you're in the car, keep your eyes on the road, but keep your ears on me, I guess is one way of putting it. But if you're watching us on YouTube, hello YouTube. But wherever you're listening, watching, consuming this from, welcome. If this isn't your first time and you've enjoyed the podcast, be sure to give it a like rating on your favorite podcast platform, as well as if you're on YouTube, be sure to comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Tell us what your favorite part of the episode was and where you're listening from. We'd love to get to know some of you. I want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by allaboutthesmokies.com. Allaboutthesmokies.com is your premier planning partner when it comes to starting planning your Smoky Mountain vacation, whether it's looking for tickets, trying to find news on things that are happening in the area, an event calendar that displays everything that's going on in the area. Whatever it is, you can find it at allaboutthesmokies.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. We send out, we don't go crazy. We don't send out a ton of newsletters, but when we do, it is chock full of good information for you and your family as you plan your Smoky Mountain vacation. That's allaboutthesmokies.com. All right, before we get to today's guest, I want to tell you a little bit about the most recent trip I took to the Smokies. It was late February. The weather ended up being really beautiful. We had one day that was a little bit chillier, but overall it was gorgeous. In the 60s and then all the way up into the 70s on my last day there. So I was there from a Saturday through Tuesday. Weekdays are still looking pretty solid as far as being able to get in to restaurants and attractions and things. But Saturday was still so busy. And I think people are just wanting to get out and do something. So I'd say there were quite a few locals that were there. We went to Gatlinburg to check out the mountain coaster there at Anakista. Parking was crazy. That $2 lot that on River Road that's normally, I've never not been able to get into it. I'm sure it's full often, but for a Saturday in February, it was kind of crazy that the parking was so full. Anakista line was super long, all the way from the front entrance, kind of stretched around the road there. One of the longest lines I've probably ever seen at Anakista. And maybe it had to do with how many people they had working the window. I'm not sure, but it was a packed Gatlinburg. As I mentioned, mountain coaster. So I had 2 mountain coasters left that I've never been able to ride. Now I can say I've officially ridden every single mountain coaster there in the Great Smoky Mountains. So if you are not following us on YouTube, youtube.com/Smokies Plus, I'll be doing a review of those 2 mountain coasters as well as ranking all of the mountain coasters in the area based on, thrill, based on theming, different things like that. So if you want to check that out, be sure to subscribe over on YouTube. But it was a fantastic trip. Not my first time there in February, but to get that kind of weather, whereas in the 60s and 70s was amazing. Actually, I ended up getting a bolt in my tire. So the low tire pressure light came on for me, while I was driving down the Smokies, about an hour away, I'd say maybe an hour and a half. That's not abnormal for my car, especially when the weather's a little bit cooler, as it was on the drive down. It tends to lose some tire pressure, and then once it warms up, the gauge goes off. Well, after a day and a half, it wasn't. So I went out and checked my tire, and it was low. The pressure was all the way down to like 7, which for my tire, it's recommended about 32.5, I think. So didn't realize I was running at that low. Did check at that point and did find a bolt right in my tire that I picked up somewhere along the way. Filled it up and took it over to Pigeon Forge Tire Service on Wares Valley Road. That place was quick and cheap. So he asked me if I wanted a plug for $25 or a patch for $35. We went ahead and went with the patch. I drove it the 6 hours that it takes me to get home. Never had an issue. I've been driving it for a week on that patch since, and it hasn't leaked an ounce of air. But I would highly recommend them. Pitchfork's Tire Service on Wares Valley Road. Quick, super quick, and cheap for me to get back on the road, and was able to get home without any issue. So that's a little bit about my trip. So if you want to follow any of the reviews of hotels and things, like I said, be sure to check out youtube.com/Smokies Plus. But it's a good trip overall. Really enjoyed it. All right, without any further ado, I welcome you, today's guest on the Smoky Mountain Podcast. All right, so I am joined by Red Utley from, you may know him from Big Brother, season 25. Is that right? Season 25, and made it 5 weeks into the season. But thank you so much for joining us, Red. I wanted to just start off by you introducing yourself to the audience and telling a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So like I say, it was season 25. I made it 37 days in Big Brother. My name is Michael Utley, but if you was to holler Michael out, I wouldn't know who you was talking to. I've been called Red since I was a little bitty thing. I'm not real sure why, but I live in the beautiful Smoky Mountains here in East Tennessee, and wouldn't trade it for anything, if I'm being honest.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, anyone who lives there, I'm a little jealous of. I mean, we've been all over the country to different places for vacations and things, and Smoky Mountains is just one of those places that I never lived there, and yet it feels like home when I come to visit. So,
that's for sure. That's what.
Yeah, sure does. So, let's talk about Big Brother for just a moment then. So, what would you say your overall experience was on a major television show like Big Brother? What was that experience like?
Honestly, for me, it was amazing. I mean, there was some tough stuff going on because I had some stuff at home that I was worried about, but the overall experience was nothing like it that I've ever been through in my life, and I've been through a lot of things. But you get a very unique perspective on people. There's only 300 and some people that's ever done this type of experience, so you're a very small group of people that ever get to experience that well. So there's a bit of exclusivity to it, you know what I mean? And it's your highest highs and your lowest lows all in the same house. It was the most boring thing I've ever done, but it was also the most exciting thing I think I've ever done.
But what ways was it boring? That's interesting. Like
60% of that house is sitting around talking about the same stuff over and over again, just burning. Right? You got to remember who you've talked about that said stuff with, which version of said stuff you went with that individual, and that is part of the game, but it's also sometimes very monotonous and boring, you know, because you can only say the same thing so many times before people start getting suspicious of one thing or another and all that. That's at least what I observed. My whole plan was just to stay honest as I could. That way I didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it'd be hard to keep your story straight. So 37 days then, you know, and what airs per week? An hour or two, depending on, you know, how much, if it's a double episode or something like that. So there's a lot that we don't see. It's just a lot of sitting around, like you said. So that certainly would be pretty boring.
And even for the live feeders, they see the same thing a lot too. So that's why the cameras switch around a lot in the live feeds. There's hundreds of cameras in that house. But you'll notice there's only 4 or 5 playing at any given time, and they select who to put on it and who not to put on it and all that. So there's no necessarily they don't interact as much in production as a lot of people think they do. I think they do so much, they have all this information and they choose how to put it together.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So like the live streams, I mean, you've got people who can pretty much watch all the time. Like, what is that like for you? I mean, was there a point where you stopped being aware of it and you just kind of lived your life there, or how'd that work?
There is times you forget that. So like when you're caught up in certain conversation that's unrelated to the game, talking about home and stuff like that, you can kind of forget where you're at. For me, it was cooking. I don't know if you watched much, but on the live feeds, I did a whole lot of cooking. That was my time for me to think and process and go through what I was doing. And everybody else used different things, I think, like pool and bumper pool and all that to distract you so you could have your time. I was never like to the point to where I didn't realize they were there or I could forget they were there. You're always kind of even walking across the living room in the middle of the night or whatever, when you're going to the bathroom, you kind of know that somebody's watching you as you walk through there. There's always that little bit of a feeling like somebody's watching you in the woods type situation.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're always like at least minorly aware of them, for sure. I was.
Yeah, to not have a moment to even think about what you're wearing or what your hair looks like when you just roll out of bed, like that.
Yeah.
That would be pretty difficult to traverse there.
Well, I mean, it's there. You just have to assign what level of care you have about it, you know?
Sure.
So, I mean, at some point you have to be able to throw some of that out. Like, for example, the bathroom situation, there's very little privacy in the Big Brother house whatsoever. There's no lock on the door. There's a camera in there too, and a microphone. So it's like I said, it's very hard to be unaware that you're being filmed.
Sure, man. The bathroom, and I've heard too that like that's a popular hangout place as well.
Yeah,
which is kind of bizarre.
I don't understand why everybody wants to hang out in a place where you clean yourself and do your business. It never made sense to me. I was never one of the bathroom crowd for that reason. It's just weird. Why y'all in here?
So let's talk about Hillbilly for a moment. Like you've kind of coined that phrase. How do you describe that to people? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, for me, Hillbilly's a little bit of both worlds. I'm a little bit of hippie and a little bit of hillbilly, a little bit of left and a little bit of right. And I think it represents a lot of people out there. I don't think anybody is one side or another. And I think a lot of folks need to understand you can represent more than one group of people. And that's kind of what me. I've grown up with a very loving heart and a very loving home. And that's kind of made me like more hippie-ish, if you will, and the type of vibes I like to put out. I'm all about positivity and love and spreading smiles, to change the world. But I'm also a very country person. I enjoy getting out hunting. I enjoy getting out fishing. I like getting out playing in the mud and building stuff with my hands and working the garden and that kind of thing. So it's one of them things just to let people know, we're all just human. You don't have to put individual labels on things, and if you are, choose one that encompasses multiple things. So that's what Hillbilly is to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we need more of that. I mean, it feels like in our world today that we're constantly looking for things to divide us, and I don't know that we're doing that consciously.
Right.
Like, I feel like there's this push to, okay, which side are you on this? Which side are you on this? And there's this constant push. And that's, I'll tell you, that's one of the things I love the Smokies for, is once you're down there and you're in Gatlinburg walking around and you see the mix of people walking the streets and the different languages being spoken, you just don't feel that there. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's why I love it here so much. I can walk this strip right here. People look at me and they immediately have this a stereotypical point of view of this guy is easy to see. So I've already broke through a lot of comfort barriers and such like that. The ice is broken and people find me very approachable, and I love that because I have got to talk to people from all over the world because of it, especially being right here in Gatlinburg. It's a very unique situation because we have about 6,000 to 10,000 residents, but we have about 15 million visitors a year. So it's a little lopsided as the population fluctuates as to who you're running into. It's very rare that you actually run in and have, not to say interesting conversation, but with a local. There's just not much local interaction here.
Yeah, and I asked that on a previous podcast before to someone who lived in the area. How hard is that for you to find a sense of community there? With it being like the majority of the people that you interact with on a daily basis being on vacation, how does that change that community aspect for you? Like,
so for me, it makes it smaller, which is kind of a good thing, which means you can address the things more readily in a smaller group. It makes the situations of living in a community and the things that arise in that easier to address, I think. Because I live in a little community called Pittman Center. When you meet other locals that have like minds, you kind of bond up a little bit quicker here because we're so bombarded with tourists. But myself, being a people person and what I do, I love the fact that I get to meet all kind of people, and I feel like I just have a larger community, if that makes sense. Like, ain't just this little area. I've just extended my community to try to include as many humans as I can get in it. and I'm afforded that opportunity right here because Lord knows we get a variety.
Yeah, you sure do. I mean, they're coming to you. You don't have to go out and seek out different types of people. Now, how long have you been in Gatlinburg?
I consider myself a local. I've been here about 7 or 8 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved here like 2015-ish, I want to say. And it's home to me. It feels more like home than the place that I grew up. The town that I grew up in, I'll keep it somewhat anonymous, but it's known a lot for drugs and such like that, and it's a tiny little place. But I just didn't want my children growing up in that type of environment, and I'm an individual that likes to entertain, and this place just made sense.
Yeah, no, it certainly fits your personality type too. So when you're thinking about Gatlinburg, and so if you've been there since 2015, and I don't know if you visited before then, obviously it's changed a lot in a lot of ways.
Oh, it's incredible how much it changed.
What, speaking of that change, like, what do you feel about it? If you read on Facebook, they're tearing down the mountainsides by putting all these buildings up and all these attractions, and it just isn't like it used to be. When you see the change and you think about how much it's changed even since you moved there, is that a good thing that the change has happened?
I mean, I don't want to label it as a good thing or bad thing, but the one thing you can always count on is stuff is always going to change. So the best thing you can do is decide how you deal with it. And if you look at it in a positive view and try to make the best of it, I think, you're not going to escape the fact that it's going to happen,
Sure.
So to go with it, go with the flow, that's what I say. And the times, they are changing, to quote Bob Dylan, and Smoky Mountains are no exception. I know a lot of people want to hold on to the older times and reminisce, and there's that nostalgia associated with a simpler time. But, now we live in a completely different time, and you can only celebrate those times past for so long before it starts to get you financially.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. You're absolutely right.
Sorry?
Hey, and calorically as well. There's a point where you can only enjoy it so much, but you're absolutely right. Now, so thinking about your time on Big Brother and how you got there from a relatively small town in Gatlinburg, I mean, minus the tourists, of course, to being noticed, and I'm sure you're recognized pretty regularly, and
not a little bit.
Yeah, what has that been like for you?
So it really wasn't that big of a transition. I had about 600,000 followers before I ever went into the Big Brother house, so I was already famous in the area.
Okay.
A lot of people knew me from the moonshine places. I do a lot of samples, and I gave a Vegas quality comedy tour with every tour that I did, and I became pretty well known in the area. And then my TikTok blew up. I'm one of the world's fastest chuggers. I drink liquid faster than most people on this planet. It's wow factor things that allow my videos to get a little bit of edge and traction. So now Lucky_Red85 is my TikTok. I think I'm almost to 700,000 followers now.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's mind-blowing to somebody like me who does come from humble beginnings, a very humble background and all that, and nothing's really changed about me. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the smiles. I tell people all the time, you can change the world one smile at a time, and it don't cost you a dime. It's the one way we can change this planet, and it don't hurt your pocketbook one bit. If you see somebody without a smile, give them yours, and they'll give it back. It's that simple. So,
I absolutely love that, and you're right. And there's so few of it. I recognized that one day when I was walking around. I think it was Walmart, which it feels devoid of joy often. But I was walking around Walmart, and I noticed, I'm like, oh, everybody just looks like they're unhappy. But then I'm also realizing, what's my face doing right now? What does it look like to them? Maybe I look the same. So you're right. Even just a smile, a nod, anything goes a long way.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned briefly your social media. You got your TikTok. They can follow you there. Are you on Facebook, Instagram?
I have bandwidth for multiple social media platforms.
I understand that.
I struggle to keep up with Instagram, which is also Lucky_Red, or it's something like that. I have a YouTube that has about 35,000 to 40,000 subscribers. That's
awesome.
Lucky85. But my TikTok is so big, it's just so much to keep up with. It's really hard for me to do other social media platforms. But I am at Three Bears General Store in Pigeon Forge quite often, doing full-time meet and greets with any fans that want to come down and see me. I try to stay there Thursday and Friday, Sunday and Monday, at least 2 to 3 days out of that schedule. I'm there all day. So it's a good opportunity for people that are just Hillbilly Red fans or Chillbilly fans in general to come down and just hang out with a hillbilly. I absolutely love my fans. They're the foundation on which we're built. Anybody in entertainment. So I'll never be that individual to ever turn anybody away. Matter of fact, I go out of my way pretty much every day for my fans because I really appreciate the position that I'm in, and those are the people to thank for it. So
awesome. Well, Red, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me a little bit, and I hope people stop by and tell you that they saw you on the podcast. That'd be awesome. All right, well, I hope you have a blessed day.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Good. I know I say it a lot, but I mean it a lot. I love you, humans.
All right, everybody, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us. If you're not subscribed already, go ahead and do it. What are you waiting on? If you've enjoyed the podcast, be sure to give it a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to. If you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to get on the comments below. Say hello. Let us know what you thought of today's episode. But that'll do it. Thank you again to Red for joining us. But this has been another podcast from the Great Smoky Mountains. We hope you have a great day. God bless.